What's going on, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to another edition of On the Road to Victory. Today's episode is actually episode 2 in podcast form, and we are joined by a very special guest, none other than Eagles beat reporter from inside the birds. He's been doing it for over 15 years, Geoff Mosher. Thank you for joining us today, Geoff. How are you doing, man?
I'm good until you just dated me in that intros there. Yeah, I've been doing it for 15 years, 16 now, so you can do the math. I'm getting
Yeah.
up there. You're getting older when you start to cover players on the Eagles who you remember when their dads played for the Eagles, like Jalen Reagor. Obviously, his dad, Monty Reagor, played in 2006. So that's how you know you're getting old.
That is the moment when I started talking about Jalen Reagor. I'm like, oh my God, not Monte. That's when I knew myself. It's not a bad thing, Geoff. You've been putting in good work, and I truly appreciate it, man.
Thank
So
you.
thank you for tuning in today, guys. Everybody, if you have any kind of questions, comments you want to throw our way, please feel free to do so. Look, guys, we didn't know we were going to have a big signing today, but here we are. We got a little something special, but wanted to talk a little bit about the draft, everything else that's going on. So, hey, somebody's pumped to see you in the building, Geoff. So thanks, guys, for tuning
What's up,
in.
everybody? What's going on? Good to see everybody.
And if you guys are watching this later, feel free to comment. Always try to get back to you. But hey, Geoff, let's get into this, man. Some big news today came out of left field. And I'm not talking about the quantitative analyst that was just added in Zachary Stever, I believe his name is. We're talking about 10-year veteran Ryan Kerrigan, somebody we all know very too well. Not a good thing for us over the past 10 years, but how are you feeling about the Eagles adding a depth piece to the defensive end position?
Yeah, first, I'm really upset that I didn't get that quantitative analysis job. I thought I was the front runner, but good luck to Zach. Congratulations to him. No, look, man, signing Ryan Kerrigan is pretty consistent with what the Eagles do from an identity standpoint, right? Now, of course, as I'm talking, I've got landscaping going on. So if you guys hear buzzing in the background, I apologize. But it's they listen, this team, and Howie Roseman said it during the draft when everybody wanted a cornerback in the first round, or if not first, second, and third. And he came out and said, look, we're never going to apologize for being trench oriented. We sign offensive linemen, we draft offensive linemen, we do that with defensive linemen as well. It's a value signing. Kind of surprised Ryan's still out there at this point, although this is kind of the time when guys who, like Alshon Jeffrey, right? He's still out there. Guys who have performed well but are a little bit long in the tooth and are coming off down years start to go off. This is probably close to when the Eagles signed LeGarrette Blount in 2017. So that's where you get these kind of signings. I think it's good because the Eagles, for the first time in a while, Jimmy, aren't as deep at defensive end as they've been in the past. You know, you've got Brandon Graham, you have Derek Barnett. Barnett's kind of battled injuries. Josh Sweat is an ascending player, but his past injuries that he's had has always made him a rotational player, and I don't think that they envision him as a starter. And then after that, when's the last time you said the Eagles were really only about 3 deep at D end? And then once you get to 4, 5, and 6, it was a big drop off. Now you're talking Joe Osman and Matt Leo and maybe the kid Teron Jackson they drafted. So this makes sense. It fits their identity. It's not a cornerback. I understand that. I still think the Eagles will eventually sign a cornerback, but I've heard the Chris Long comparison, how you get a guy who's still got something left in the tank at a value deal, and I think that's a fair comparison. And it also shows, not to be long-winded, that the Eagles, and we say this on Inside the Birds a lot, they're never going to tank. They're never going to give up a season. They're always going to try to turn over a roster while still trying to compete. Because if you want to turn over a roster and you want to find out about certain players like Jalen Hurts, for example, it does you no good to do that kind of research when you don't have a good enough team around that person, be it a quarterback or anybody else, to accurately assess that player.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And, you know, the battle starts in the trenches. And we talk about that all the time here. And I always hear you guys talking about it inside the birds. And it's the truth. And Howie is always going to live by that code. And I'm very happy about it. So when it came draft time, even before this signing, you talk about adding all of that depth to this defensive line. Teron Jackson, Patrick Johnson, Marlon Tuipulotu, and then, of course, Milton Williams. We added a lot of depth there. And then you go ahead and you add a veteran to help these guys grow. And Ryan Kerrigan, that shows that what you just said, they're always trying to compete. And the last time we had a nice rotational piece like that, we won the Super Bowl. Now, I'm not saying this team is anywhere near that right now. We know we're retooling, but like you said, it's not a corner, but there's lots of holes on this damn team. So be happy. This is something we needed. It's a cheap, low cost deal. And let's be real, how he's been doing it with all of the veteran he's been signing. And we talked about this being possible due to the fact that, we're going to have more cap space next year. Maybe some of these guys sign a 1-year deal, bet on themselves, getting a little bit older. This is perfect for us right now, Geoff. And I think I'm excited to what Howie is doing. And one of the other ways we knew this could happen was Zach Ertz. I made a video right after we signed Kerrigan, and I said, look, we've been saying this all off season. We tried to trade him, didn't get the value. You're going to save more money after June 1st. So on June 2nd, probably be released, trade, whatever. So now today, what are your thoughts on Zach Ertz not showing up to phase 2? It looks like that's pretty much what's happening. What are your thoughts on the Zach Ertz situation?
Yeah, and I didn't expect him to show up. I don't expect him to be a part of the team. Now, the June 1st contract thing, I'm not sure will apply to him, only because you can only, to my knowledge, designate 2 players as a post-June 1st cut, unless maybe you just
wait till after
June 1st, and then you wait till after and you cut. Yep. That's a good point. So either way, once he is off the team, by either trading him or releasing him, that will clear about $8 million. But do remember that they have to sign their rookie. So I don't know that they're going to take that $8 million and put that into somebody of great significance out there. I'm not even sure there's somebody of great significance left. It depends on what someone might think is a really, really good player out there. Like, Steven Nelson's a good cornerback. I wouldn't put him among the elite, but he does have strong interest. And so he will probably make a decent amount of money. And maybe the Eagles could be more competitive in his market once they've got Zach Ertz off the roster. And to your other point about the Super Bowl team and how they were built, and I want to agree with that while also echoing the sentiment that I'm not expecting the Eagles to win the Super Bowl next year either. But if you look at the Super Bowl team specifically on offense, right? Carson Wentz, we know, had an unbelievable year, All-Pro MVP caliber year, but they really were not a team of a bunch of superstar playmakers. I mean, Torrey Smith, Nelson Aguilar. Zach Ertz was coming into his own. I don't think he was ever a top 1, 2, or 3 tight end. He was always a very good one. And Alshon Jeffrey, again, a good receiver, not one of the top 5 in the league. But where they were elite was the offensive line. Where they were elite was the defensive line. Remember, they had all sorts of injuries in the secondary. Ronald Darby was missed about 10 games that year. So that is, again, a good reason why you always want to fortify the trenches. And whenever you have that, you have the ability, I think, to compete in every game you're going to play as long as it's healthy. I don't know what record the Eagles are going to have this coming year. I don't know how good they're going to be, but as long as those guys in the trenches stay healthy, I think they have a chance to be decent. I don't think they're going to be picking in the top 3 or 4 of the draft again next year, as long as those guys stay healthy.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And, talking about that, the Ertz situation, it's just a flip-flop. Right now, if you would have traded him in the draft, you would have had about a little bit over $8 million in dead money. You would have saved about 4.8 in cap space. It just flips. So if you wait June 2nd, you have about 4.8, 4.9 in dead money, and then you save about $8.5 million in cap space. So that's a move you're going to make, but you're also going to get that $4 million from the June 2nd post-designation cuts for Alshon Jeffrey and Malik Jackson. So that's $4 million. But like you said, you have to give about $7 to $9 million. Depends really with these rookies. You're going to have to sign them, and you've got all these other guys. So that's how you're able to get Kerrigan, but going to free up some space. But I don't see any huge moves like you said, but perfect name to mention, Steven Nelson. That could be someone perfect to pair with the Darius Slay, and you could really see this team grow a Zach McPherson inside. I'm excited about it. So leading into that cornerback position, we didn't address the outside corner, and obviously that's a huge need for the Eagles. We all know that. How did you feel about the draft that we did have? Obviously Devontae Smith picking up an additional first, but what were your thoughts, and who are some of the guys that really stand out and maybe could be day one starters for you, Geoff?
Yeah, I'm always reluctant, and I think we do this on Inside the Birds a lot, and not try to jump on the same train that a lot of people. I'm not going to sit here and judge person for player for player, good pick, bad pick. I like to judge approach. I think people constantly say you really can't judge a draft until a few years down the road. So I was very critical last year because I didn't like the approach. There were certain things that just didn't sit well with me. And, and that was based on where they were taking guys based on the information I was receiving from other teams around the league. Now, of course, reasonable teams and people can disagree, but when you get information from 3, 4, 5, 6 other teams that this prospect was rated here and the Eagles took him there, you start to wonder what's going on here. And if you remember last year, to me, it felt like they had a menu full of nothing but traits, right? And they were just throwing darts at guys with traits. And it's like, but are they good football players? Was really what I was wondering. This year, I felt like this was an Andy Reid era type of draft, which means it was heavy on linemen, right?
Yes.
Pass rushers, offensive linemen, a couple of, Andy always liked those fastball guys like a Milton Williams, who is maybe has some short arms for the position, but moves laterally very quickly, has burst, has explosion, can play tackle, can play end. And so, yeah, I mean, they built through the trenches. The only thing on Andy Reid is that they took, and on Eagles honestly, is that they took a wide receiver that high. But look, he's an elite guy, at least supposed to be, and they traded in the top 10. So I can't knock them for taking an elite player. I do believe they did try to get Patrick Surtain, and that would make sense too because he was an elite prospect as well, or J.C. Horn. They just weren't able. Those guys were off the board. So the fact that they did not take a cornerback in round 2 and round 3, some people are upset about. But I would say I'm not going to tell anybody what to think. I never try to do that. But I would say that should show you, though, that they went with the best player available on their board. So you look at the guys that went in the second round. I think it was Asante Samuel Jr., who's 5'10", and I can't remember the other cornerback who went after. I can't remember. But they may have viewed the Eagles may have viewed those guys as slot corners, which the Eagles have plenty of. They need an outside corner. So look, I can't knock a team for taking the best players available. I cite the Steelers. If you would have said last year, going into last year's draft, right, what's one position the Steelers probably don't need? You probably would have said wide receiver. I mean, they had Deontay Johnson, they had Juju Smith, they had James Washington. All of them had been productive at times. And, obviously Ben Roethlisberger had been pretty successful with those guys. And then they went and took Chase Claypool in the second round, and he could have been rookie of the year. And he was really vital to what they did. So if you have good players ranked above players of need, you take the good players that you have on your draft. That's my philosophy. That's how and that's learned through talking with people in the NFL.
Geoff, I mean, that's the same philosophy, and that's exactly listening to experts like you, just trying to learn. I mean, the Eagles, everybody clamored before the draft. Oh, you got to go with best player available this year. So many holes. This team's rebuild. Exactly. Yes, that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
So Howie goes into this draft and does exactly that, taking what we believe was his best players available. And then most of the people are pissed off. Well, we had to go corner. We had to get a linebacker. And it's like, well, I thought we were going best player available. Trust me, I liked JOK. Trust me, I wanted an outside corner. But I think in the end, they went with on their board who was the best player available. And I got excited about all of the players. And like you said, you got to take a couple years to really judge someone. And that's why I always tell people to hold off on Reagor and bashing some of these players. It's like, look, guys, this is the NFL. It's a much different game. Some of these guys have come from different style systems. Let's just hold off. These young guys, I'm excited, though. Added to the trenches. Loved what you said about reminded you of Andy Reid era. That's how you build a champion. You start in the trenches. And what better than to have a guy like Ryan Kerrigan here? Well, what's the point? 1 year. Well, that 1 year could be very valuable to these young men. And I thought that, man, he's been killing it, Howie Roseman, this offseason so far. Fans are calling for Howie's head at this point. You know it. There's been so much dissension in this front office. But Doug's gone. Carson's gone. It seems like it's kind of happy right now. Like Nick Sirianni, everybody's on the same page. I mean, Nick Sirianni, the energy, we'll get into him in a second. Yeah. But Howie Roseman, how do you think he's doing so far? And do you think maybe fans need to lay up? I'm not saying give the guy a pass because he's made some mistakes in past years, but I think he's had a good offseason. How do you think he's done so far?
Yeah, I have trouble with this. I think he's had a good offseason, certainly. As far as since the Carson Wentz trade, he got good value for, and what he's done in signing guys to fill the holes, the safety, the linebacker, the running backs, claiming Kerryon Johnson. He's made a series of really quality value moves without having to make the biggest splash, correct? So that I agree. But I will always struggle to reconcile how a guy this deep into being a GM, 10 years now, allowed everything to – well, I don't want to say allowed like it's all his fault, but was part of a franchise, a big part of that allowed them the 18 months preceding this last few months to happen.
You
Like
can put it on him, Geoff. Put it
yeah,
on
he's
him.
part of it. Like I have trouble. I always use this analogy. If Howie Roseman lit my house on fire and then put the fire out himself, I'm not going to be like, man, what a great job you did of putting out this fire, and ignore the fact that he helped light the fire to my house, and he's got to bear responsibility for his interpersonal relationships, be it with quarterback, be it with head coach, be it with owner, be it with other people. I mean, it's not like just Inside the Birds had reported on some things going on. I mean, certainly the Inquirer, the Athletic. I mean, we're not all making this stuff up. I mean, he's got some serious issues dealing with a lot of things that go on in that front office and compartmentalizing it the right way. And for that, I always wonder, like, yes, you can rebuild it up when you have all these assets. Can you sustain it? I mean, 3 years removed from a Super Bowl, you shouldn't be this bad, but they are. And so it's on him. And this is going to be his fourth head coach. But I always caution people, if you're the type of person who wants Howie Roseman fired, okay, you have a right to your opinion. But if you think Jeffrey Lurie is going to hire an anti-Howie Roseman to be the next GM, that's where I'd say you're probably wrong. He's probably going to hire a similar styled person, just not named Howie Roseman. Someone who's really into analytics, somebody who progressive with the numbers. Like he's not going to hire Chris Ballard, like the Colts GM who came up through the football side, most likely. I mean, I never know. Jeffrey's unpredictable, but Joe Banner to Howie Roseman, I just don't see him hiring this guy who is mainly coming up just through a football only or a scouting only sector.
Yeah, and look, they just hired a quantitative analyst we were making a joke about in the beginning of and congratulations to him. Just saying, this is what this team is pointing towards, analytics here. So you're right. And I ask you that question because I'm right with you. I'm right in the middle there where it's like, I'm not clamoring for him to be fired because I'm putting a lot on Jeffrey Lurie, and a lot of people didn't want to do that, but it's like, you're the one letting him run roughshod on this team. So to fall from grace, like you said, so far, it's like, is this real? And as Eagles fans, it's hard, to watch that. And I'm sure in the media, it's like you're trying to get the answers and there's so much going on, but dude, there was something wrong there. So Howie does not get a pass from me, but I think he did an okay job this year. We just, like we talked about with these draft picks, we have to wait and see how these pan out. And he is on the hot seat. He better be, but like you said, be careful what you wish for. You don't know what you'll get next. So very intriguing there. But the one thing I did like, the coaching, it just wasn't changing. We were at one point in the season, Miles Sanders was like second in yards per carry, and we were running the ball 35% of the time. That's just unnecessary. So we go get Nick Sirianni, Mr. I like to run the ball. We draft him a running back. We claim a running back. We re-sign a running back. We're going to make sure we run this ball. This guy's going to open up the offense. I'm so excited about his energy, everything about him. Nick Sirianni, man, how do you feel about him and getting to actually talk to him? What can you tell us about him? Just what is your impression and how you think he's going to do?
Man, that's the question. What I really hope to see out of him, and what I read from his comments or take from his comments, is that he's really in tune with talent development. And I think wide receivers, especially, he comes from a wide receiver background. His pass game specialist, Kevin Patullo, played wide receiver and quarterback. Aaron Moorhead is now going to be the first coach to be the wide receivers coach for 2 years in a row in like 6 or 7 years. And that's something I harp on with this team all the time. I can't stand it. If there's one thing I get very opinionated about, because we try to be very objective and level-headed, but I do think this is objective on Inside the Birds, is that while Jeffrey Lurie and Howie are considered patient because they were patient with Howie, right, and patient with Andy Reid, this team fires assistant coaches and position coaches left and right. Like I haven't done the study. I want to, but I'd be surprised if they weren't the number one team in coaching turnover, especially at the position coach level in the NFL. I mean, they had 6 wide receivers coaches in 6 years. Now you can blame the coaches and we can all get on them and say that these guys did a bad job. But what does that say about your ability to hire, your vetting ability, right? So that's been a big sore point for me. And I look at this coaching staff now with Nick, and I see some, guys like Nick, who was at least an offensive coordinator. Shane Steichen was a coordinator. Aaron Moorhead played wide receiver in the NFL, was coach in college, will now be a coach 2 years in a row. I hope for good things for him. The defensive backs coach, Denard Wilson, came from the Jets where he was a defensive backs coach. Good. These are good things. I look at the linebackers coach, and I see he's 27 years old. He's never been a linebackers coach before. He was an assistant linebackers coach. So he's never actually played, never actually led a room. And he's the same age as Alex Singleton. And this is not a position that the Eagles have like, blue chip talent all over the map at. So I worry about it a little bit. Same thing at some other positions, special teams, tight end, safety. We'll see. But in general, you have to be you hope to be optimistic about the staff. And I do think that wide receiver development will be emphasized more. It was quarterback development because you had Frank Reich and Doug Peterson and John DeFilippo. And then when that got broken up, you saw the development regress a little bit. But with this group, wide receiver development should be key. And that's important because they've invested so much young capital in wide receivers.
Bing, bing, bing. Right there. I literally made a video right after these coaches were hired, and that's exactly the emphasis I put on it. Look at their careers. They've all worked with wide receivers or quarterbacks. This passing game is going to be vastly improved, but we're not going to be just passing the ball. Like I said at the beginning here, talking about Sirianni, we're going to run the ball, and we're going to open up the passing game. So I agree 100% with you. I'm very excited about Steichen, Johnson, everybody. You talk about retaining Aaron Moorhead, loved it. But another one that we retained, I literally thought, like you said, it's so hard for us to hold on to assistant coaches. I thought Jeff Stoutland was going to Alabama. It was game over. Thank God he is back. So luckily, we're seeing two positions that are very important to us. We got the coaches back, but I love that Sirianni's here. I think he's going to bring that right energy. And I just think that we needed to change. You talked about the development of the assistant coaches, but the players too. These players, these coaches go elsewhere and they thrive. And it's like, wait a second. So I think that we'll definitely be able to thrive with Sirianni. Now, Jalen Hurts, how do you feel about him? It's QB1. I know they don't want to say it, and I'm fine with that. I know a lot of people read too much into it. I think he wants everyone to compete. How do you feel about Jalen Hurts as QB1, and how do you feel about Nick Sirianni not naming it? Do you feel that's a big deal?
No, I don't think it's a big deal. He's trying to create an atmosphere of competition. I think that's normal. I hope the best for Jalen Hurts, but I'm very uncertain. I know that most teams I spoke to prior to the draft felt that he was a third or fourth rounder. We know that the Eagles had different reasons for wanting to draft him that high, and they believed, and I will go to my grave believing this. I've been told it enough. That they it's not like they envisioned all of this happening with Carson Wentz. They drafted him to be a good backup quarterback who could take over if Carson Wentz got hurt because at a low cost, because they saw how much they had to pay in the past years from Chase Daniel to Nick Foles for backup quarterbacks. I didn't agree with that philosophy of second round pick, but I understood why they felt that it was important. And so you have a guy who they expected to be a backup now being QB1. Who most teams felt was a third or fourth round pick. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be good. There have been plenty of guys. Derek Carr was a second round pick. Colin Kaepernick was a second round pick. There are plenty of guys who have had success in the second round. You go back and look, the totals, though, the evidence more suggestly says that he won't, only because, Drew Lock's a second round pick and who's another, Geno Smith. Like if you go look at the Deshaun Kaiser, right? I mean, so I really don't know what to expect. A lot of this has to do with the coaching, the team around him, his ability to absorb everything in another weird offseason where you don't know how many guys are going to show up to these voluntary workouts. So I hope the best for him. Because I say things like this, Jimmy, people tend to rip me and say I'm anti-Jalen Hurts. I don't see anything wrong with not being sure about a guy. I'd rather be that instead of the guy who comes in here and says he's going to be a 5-time All-Pro or he's going to suck and he'll be out of the league in 2 years. I just don't know because I don't know what this coaching staff didn't draft him, and I don't know how they feel about him. But we'll find out. I hope he winds up working out because it helps the Eagles, right? Because then you don't have to use those first round picks on on a quarterback, and you can continue to pad the team. But listen, the reality is, if Deshaun Watson didn't have this legal issue hanging over him, there's a good chance he'd be an Eagle right now. This team is and you're hearing this from me. You hear it from a lot of people. This team is hell-bent on having like a Kansas City style number one offense. And if they can get a quarterback who's already proven to be a great quarterback in this league, they'll make that move. And it doesn't mean Jalen Hurts stinks or can't go somewhere else to be successful. It's just that's how they think. And if you have a problem with that, take it up with them, not me. I'm just the messenger.
No, and that's the truth. And Jeffrey Lurie has been chomping at the bit every single year ever since the analytics thing started. Brought in Chip Kelly. I mean, they were willing to trade up for Marcus Mariota to the house. Oh, thank God Chip Kelly didn't get that done. But it's like, hey, this team is always willing. And you're right. They were interested in Watson. They were interested when they heard Rodgers, everything, Wilson. And you're right. If he can get a deal done, he will do it. The thing is, it doesn't mean, like you said, Jalen Hurts can't be successful. So we're all hoping the best for him, but it's a huge unknown. It's a new coaching staff that, like you said, they didn't choose him. But what a great coach, Nick Sirianni, that talks about playing to people's strengths. So if anyone can get the best out of him, I believe it's him. So really looking forward to seeing what he could do. Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator over at Florida, came over now to be the QB's coach. I love the fact that you mentioned Wilson, the DB's coach. He was also a passing game coordinator for the Jets. So all these guys help with the passing game.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's like there's multiple versatile guys in coaching and players. We made sure to add guys that no matter where you look, these guys can help out certain positions that we are in dire need of help. Wide receiver, defensive back. So right. I like it. But yeah, Nick Rallis, little questionable. He's 27, but hey, best of luck to him. But hey, we got to get rolling out here, guys. Geoff, I cannot thank you enough for joining us today, man.
No, thanks for having me on. It was awesome. Again, sorry it took me this long. Shout out to everybody who's in the comments. I saw AJ in there. She's an awesome follower of Inside the Birds as well. Thanks for everybody for making comments. And thank you, Jim, for having me on. I really appreciate it, man.
Oh, I can't thank you enough, seriously. And everybody go check out Inside the Birds with Geoff and Adam Kaplan. Andrew, those guys are awesome putting out the work. You got to check it out, guys. But Geoff, thank you. Sorry, I can't even speak. It's no that damn vaccine getting me. All right, guys, have yourselves a great day. And as always, go Birds!